What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Wager Alarm Tuesday night live stream. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me, of course, Craig Mish. And Craig, here we go, man. At least we're starting off the season above 500. Super contest. We went 3-2. We went 4-3 in the Golden Nugget contest. We were in it to win it on a number of the plays, even though the ones that didn't turn out for us very favorably. But like you said, and like we've talked about over and over again, if you're in it in the fourth quarter and it's late,
that's right.
Still got to be feeling good about it.
That's right. And again, we start off with a total of 12 picks, and we win 7 out of 12. And if you're doing that every week, you're making a lot of money doing this. So that indeed will be the key for us to pick up off what we did last year and do the same thing. For those of you guys who watched the live stream last year, it was the first time that Howard and I went through pick by pick. Tried to give you guys advice on which games to take over the weekend. We got a tremendous response. Thousands of you guys watch these streams every single week. I know this past Friday night, we had a massive viewing for all of our picks, and good for you. If you took advantage of the advice, you did very well. I think that we always try to stress, no one's winning 90%, 80% of these picks. It doesn't happen. Sometimes we'll have good weeks. Sometimes we'll have bad weeks, but Howard just gave you the point. And as we go through the games, and you'll see, in particular, out of the 12 selections and 2 were repetitive, our wins were more or less clear. None of them were in doubt. And the losses were more or less clear, ironically. None were in doubt with the exception of 1, which we will talk about, which easily could have been a win.
With the exception of 2. I'm just going to say this flat out. When Nick Foles got hurt.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
and he got
that.
knocked out of the game with a broken collarbone. I'm sorry. You know what? We lost that pick, but I'm not going to say anything about that because that game was going to be close right from the start. And yeah, so I mean that one.
Yeah, that was true. I forgot about that. When a quarterback gets hurt, in the NFL and college football, this isn't like playing in the 80s anymore, where the running backs get 35 carries and the receivers, when they get 5 catches in a game, it's a miracle. Like Jerry Rice is, the most dominant player in the league. Listen, Jerry Rice would still be great in this day and age. I don't want to take anything away from him, but with the way that guys play now, it's just a different game. So, to start off with the Golden Nugget contest, we had a total of 7 picks. It's the way that it goes, and we chose to go with a total of 5 college and 2 pro. On my list, I think I'm missing one here. Maybe you can help me out here. I think I may have missed one here.
Army, Missouri, Florida State, Florida International, UCLA was the other loss.
Oh, and UCLA. Okay, so to kind of taking a review of those, the first pick that we had last week was Army. What a gorgeous pick that was. That almost was a money line pick against the spread. Army's been our best friends for, almost 2 years now. Look, they cover a lot. They play very well. They had the longest winning streak in the country. They very easily could have won that game. Their kicker lined up for a 48-yard field goal at the end of the game to beat Michigan. And it was a little sad. I kind of wanted Army to win, but I felt good about the cover there. So we got started off there. Missouri just rolled. It was not even close. Missouri got off to a phenomenal start against West Virginia. West Virginia may be one of those teams that we have to start fading every week because it looks like they're just not going to be competitive at all. Dana Holgorsen left, and they have a new head coach there. And then things went sour in college for us, ironically. We went 2-3. I thought we were going to have a 5-0 day. Florida International, FIU, was a bad pick. They never were close to covering. They were never even winning in the game against Western Kentucky. They just did not play well offensively. In fact, Western Kentucky even had an onside kick at that point after they scored a touchdown. They just looked like they caught FIU way off, so that was a bad handicap by me. Florida State had a 21-0 lead in that game, and they gave it away completely, and they went to overtime against a no-name school. I can't trust Florida State at all. Another real bad pick. And then, UCLA was not a good pick either. Chip Kelly is in big trouble already at UCLA. They're already 0-2 coming off the season they had last year. I even thought that UCLA would go over their win total of 6.5. That doesn't look good either. So we started off college 2-3 for the week. But then, Howard, weirdly enough, because usually college can be easier than the NFL, but our 2 favorite picks in the NFL we used in the Golden Nugget contest, and we also used them in the Super contest, and they both won. And so that really got us above 500.
And one of them made me really nervous. And can we just talk about the Colts?
Okay,
the Colts with 6.5 points. When Adam Vinatieri is missing 3 field goals and an extra point, leaving 10 points on the field, I was freaking out about that game. I was literally freaking out about that game.
We were texting. I was in shock. I got to be honest. I was in shock. Not about the field goals, but the extra point.
What is that?
If he kicks that extra point, they win. And he can still miss 3 field goals. So, when we start reviewing the games this week, and we'll take a look at it, and I feel like the Colts are probably going to be a good betting team this year because they're going to be underdogs a lot. I was probably more impressed with them than any other team that lost in the NFL. I thought they played really well against the Chargers. And again, you mentioned it. If Vinatieri kicks one of those 3 field goals and hits the extra point, the Colts win going away. Chargers are just not a team to trust in the early part of the season. So certainly that was the later game. And then the early game is that we were on the right side of the biggest blowout in week 1 in the history of the NFL. It was a no doubter. We talked about it on the Tuesday live stream, how we were probably going to take the Colts no matter what going into the weekend. That was probably, I would say, my consensus favorite pick. And then you were like, yes, let's get on it too. And then you said, the Ravens, right? And I'm like, yeah, I feel like the Ravens. And the way that I got convinced of that was I realized, Howard, that game's probably gonna be the last time we can go against the Dolphins all season long. I know everyone is gonna want to jump on them every week. There is not going to be a lot of value moving forward. I understand the Patriots probably are 50 points better than Miami, but
18.5 right now.
On the road, I don't think we're going to use that game this week. I mean, come on. Dolphins score one time early on, and that it's going to become a problem.
Well, let's talk about the overreaction also that we're going to see, because the Ravens, they're at home, granted, but they're still 13.5 point favorites.
That's insane.
Over Arizona.
That's insane. Baltimore should never be 2 touchdown favorites over anybody this early in the season. Yeah, I mean, what happens if the Ravens beat the Dolphins 24-7? You're telling me that Vegas line is minus 13.5? It's like 9.5, 10 maximum. 2 touchdowns against there. And I'm not even saying that Arizona's a good football team at all. We had a plan of fading whoever won that game, and the figures they tied. The one game that we needed somebody to win, they ended up tying. So our third play of the day in the NFL, so in the Super Contest, we're 1-0 with the Ravens. We go 1-1 with the Jaguars because Foles got hurt and it was just over from that point forward. Then we moved over to the late games, and we picked 3 late games. Ironically, we picked the Colts, which was a winner, so we were 2-1. The Cowboys was a winner. That was our last play. We were waiting. That was like our 5th in terms of confidence, and that was an easy one. And then, you know what? The Lions was a really good pick. It was. The handicap was right. They dominated the game. They let Arizona come all the way back, and it ended up being a tie. But look, we were over 500. We went 3-2. I do feel bad about that Lions one, Howard. We should have been 4-1. Yep. But that's the equivalent of doing a parlay where you bet 3 or 4 teams and you lose one and go, oh, I should have won. That's what this is. It's betting. It's wagering. You're going to win some. You're going to lose some. Final possession. It was really disappointing. In fact, when I was texting you, I thought that the Lions had already won. I didn't even realize that Arizona had come all the way back. That game didn't end until like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, so, it was a real downer there. But I mean, again, listen, we've talked about this, and yeah, you know what? The Lions' defense completely crumbled. It would have been, no different than betting the Jets, and then watching the Jets turn around and cough up a
same
lead
thing.
There.
You're right.
So I mean, listen. While, yes, you don't want to take a loss, we're looking at the long haul here as well. Like, we're not just looking week to week. We're also looking at the long haul, at least for us in the Super Contest. And when you make a pick like that and it comes up with an L this time, okay, that's fine. That's not me saying, well, we didn't know or we weren't sure or anything like that. We had it mapped out right, and we just got hit with a little bad luck.
Yeah, and again, if you look back to week 1, and some of the other games that we could have taken. And this is where you put, and look, sometimes we'll be on the wrong, in the NFL and in college, we'll be on the wrong side where we come on the live stream, we just say, we did that was a terrible pick. But with all 5 pro games, you could make a case that there was legitimately a chance that we could go 5-0, which means we're on the right path in terms of the thinking. And that's super important because you know what? If you took Philadelphia against Washington, yes, Philadelphia could have easily covered at the end, but Howard, they didn't deserve that. Washington dominated that game for almost 3/4. If you took the Ravens, how are you feeling about that? I'm sorry, if you took the Dolphins, how are you feeling about that after week 1? Where you picked a team that lost 59-10? What if you took Seattle over Cincinnati? Was that the right handicap? Seattle had no chance to cover that game from start to finish. So, in all, the Jaguars were probably the one that looks the worst, but you're right. I alluded to that. You alluded to it once, and Minshew played okay. But once they lost Foles, I mean, look, Kansas City just took the ball and just dominated that thing. So, we'll get into some of the lines this week. But again, overall 4-3 in the Golden Nugget contest, which you can find online, and the Las Vegas Super Contest. All the picks are posted there. And then Howard, I thought you did a great job. You did a great job posting all of the picks on Wager Alarm, everything that we did over the weekend, so people can see. So hopefully we continue the winning. We would love to finish in the money, and we would love to win one of these things. But if at the end of the year we're about 60%, no one's going to sit here and complain. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. So I think well done for week 1.
Good job indeed. All right, well, let's take a look. Let's look at some lines. This is what we do on Tuesday nights. We wrap everything up. We kind of go through how our picks went, and then we look towards the lines here. We'll give a couple of leans. We're not making picks right now, unless, of course, we see a line is just so crazy out of whack that we feel like you should bet it now before it moves in either direction there, and you get the best money line on your pick there as well. So let's talk a little college action here. Number 1, Alabama. You wanted to talk about them against South Carolina. Alabama on the road in South Carolina. It's a -26 for the Crimson Tide. I mean, how do you go against these guys?
Yeah, I think this week in college, we'll have some good betting opportunities by the time Friday rolls around in the live stream. But just to be transparent with the actual schedule in college, starting next week, we start getting some massive head-to-head top 25 games and conference games. Unfortunately, this week does look like a week where we're getting a lot of duds. Again, a lot of big favorites against some subpar teams. In fact, there aren't 2 teams in the top 25 that face off against each other at all, which is rare in college. So just kind of taking a look at the top teams, at least in the country. Alabama's -26 at South Carolina. Clemson is -27 at Syracuse. And so I just wanted to mention that at least so you kind of know where we're coming from there. But none of the good teams are playing against high-quality opponents. The most interesting game that I find this week is Stanford traveling cross-country to take on the University of Central Florida. UCF is stepping up their game after having 2 unbelievable seasons of being undefeated, and some people felt like they needed to be in the playoff or be in the national championship game. Of course, they didn't get into any of that. And UCF right now is -7.5 against Stanford because their quarterback is also hurt. So that will be an interesting game to look at just because they, in general, haven't played a lot of tougher opponents outside of their conference, although they have played well in their championship game, in their conference, and their bowl game. This will be a pretty good test for them early on in the season. So come Friday, I'll certainly have picks and we'll put in our Golden Nugget picks. But in general, there isn't like that juicy LSU Texas matchup like there was last week. Those just don't exist for whatever reason in college this week. In fact, Thursday night's actually one of the more interesting games, or Friday night, as it turns out. I don't know why there's no college, by the way, Thursday. But Friday, North Carolina, who beat Miami last week, they're 2-0 now. Mac Brown, who was Texas's coach, is now coaching North Carolina. He came out of retirement hasn't coached in like 5 years, and they're going to be at Wake Forest. This is like another huge game for them. And if North Carolina can go 3-0, this would be one of the best stories in college football this season. So we'll see how the lines move, and by the time we get to Friday, we'll certainly have our picks. We'll just have to decide out of the 7 picks how many college picks we go with this week.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing, and I actually kind of like that a lot. I like the fact that, originally we did think that you had to go 5 and then 2. Now, actually, we can kind of mix it up a little bit more there, especially if we do feel like we're more confident with some NFL games, to say the least. No doubt about it there. All right, well, so we'll look at some more college stuff there, a couple of games that we like here and there. A team that I've been tracking also, Craig, I haven't looked at what their what the spread is right now. I know that my Hawaii Rainbow Warriors are heading to Washington State. It's actually Washington. They're going up against the Huskies.
That'll be a tough game for them.
It is going to be a tough game for them. They're 2-0 right now. They just beat Oregon State by 3. And so, yeah, I'm kind of looking at that one there. This is just a fun one for me. This might not be something that we're going to use in the Super Contest, but I do think that the team is strong, and I do like the way they play, and I'd like to see what happens with them. And then, of course, there's always that factor of any team that comes to Hawaii to play them at home is basically taking a vacation.
Right. Well, the game's at Washington this week. They're minus 21, Washington.
Right.
So
minus 21. All right, I'm going to lean Hawaii with the points.
Hawaii, look, they can go toe-to-toe with anyone. Oklahoma is minus 23 at UCLA. I don't know how we could take UCLA again after seeing that last week. I think I got to get off them. TCU is at Purdue. They're minus 2. The Gators are at Kentucky this week. Florida's minus 8.5. There's no total on a lot of these games this week for whatever reason. I guess the totals in college haven't come out yet. Iowa at Iowa State. That's always a pretty good rivalry game. And Iowa's minus 2.5 on the road there.
I don't know if I want to play with those little rivalry games. If there's one thing that you've helped me learn, it's that those rivalry games are one of the toughest to bet. You don't really want to do it.
They're very unpredictable.
Right, yeah. So they get really unpredictable, and I don't necessarily know if I want to do that. I do like staying in that realm of the SEC and down in Florida because you do have a really good grip on those teams.
Until last week, I did.
Well, you know what? I mean, listen. I'm sure you're going to end up being a lot better in the future. Now let's talk about what's going on in the NFL right now here, because I do want to take a look at the lines. And I did mention that the Patriots are 18.5-point favorites, but a news story just broke, and it actually just broke before we started the live stream, where Antonio Brown, apparently in a federal lawsuit filed, has 3 sexual assault counts going up against him. Now, Antonio Brown fought back and is now showing on Twitter. He's showing a scroll of Instagram conversation. Apparently that the woman who's accusing him or whatever has been extorting him for some time. So it's back and forth, and there's a massive drama there. But like you said, it's the quarterback change that really tilts on the lines very much. Now, we know 18.5, it's gone up,
considerably
over the course of the day here. Does this Antonio Brown stuff become a distraction? Does it affect the line in any way, shape, or form? Not that we're taking Miami.
I think maybe against a team that's not named Miami, but I don't think that this would change all that much. I found it so weird that the Raiders Broncos line was moving so much, and I don't know if it was predicated on that or not, but it seemed like it was moving quite a bit. The interesting note, by the way, on this game, and I don't know if I mentioned this. I apologize if I did on the previous live stream. But on Friday, when I was doing my radio show, what happens is late in the week. So, for example, this coming Friday, and on some books online, they release the week 2 the next week's lines in the NFL. And so, for about a 48-hour period, you can bet already on week 3 before anything even happens. And then once the games go off, they take all the lines off because they're not stupid enough to have live games up on a line. Like, for example, Tom Brady gets hurt and they got a line sitting there and you could bet it. So they take it down. And you could have bet New England minus 9.5 last Friday. That's what the line was. We were looking at it during the show. And I remember saying during the show, wow, New England only minus 9.5 at Miami. This may be, by the time that game's over against the Ravens, if they get blown out, you'll never get 9.5 or 10 or 11. And here we are. It's minus 18.5. So let's just look at the line since it came out on Sunday night, because that's the legitimate line. The week before doesn't really count. It was 15.5, then 16, 16.5, 17, 17.5. I'm seeing some 18. It's going to be really hard to, of course, take the Dolphins. It's also going to be really hard, I think, to take the Patriots. I don't ever recall laying this many points on the road ever in anything that I've ever done. But if there was ever a time to do it, certainly this could possibly be it. Cowboys and Redskins, they'll play on Sunday. There's a big line move there on the total for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's gone from 44 to 46.5. Perhaps this is a reaction to Dallas playing well offensively and Washington and Keenum also lighting it up a little bit, Howard. I guess that's the only reason why. Do you see any other reason why this would go up to?
No, that's got to be what it is. I mean, Case Keenum threw for 380 yards, but I think that's, again, one of the things that we've always talked about here is the overreaction that happens from week 1 to week 2. I mean, it's massive. And when you talk about, Case Keenum threw for 380 yards, he still doesn't have decent wide receivers. He still doesn't have a decent tight end, or at least anything more than a backup in Vernon Davis. And the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, let's face it, they're not that good. Defensively, they are not as strong as they have been in the past. So I think that that's definitely going to be a little bit of an exaggeration, thinking that these are two very potent offenses. I think the Redskins' defense is actually being underrated here. And, and when I see the 46.5, the fact that it moved there, it kind of has me leaning towards the under. I think that these two teams play each other extremely tight. Redskins do give the Cowboys some fits here and there, and I think that it's going to be a very interesting game, to say the least.
Yep. Browns and Jets is the other big mover in terms of a total. That line went from 46.5 to 45 since it opened on Sunday night, so that's down 1.5. And this, Howard, is clearly a reaction. I don't know if you feel it's an overreaction or not. I think the Browns people are overreacting to. I think they'll be fine. Jets, I'm not so sure. But either way, both teams struggled mightily on offense, so they moved this line down from 46.5 to 45. Am I guessing right on that? You see anything else? Why that?
Yeah, no, I think you're guessing right on that. I think that that's definitely something that you can deal with. When Sam Darnold has 20% of his passes batted down at the line, and the dude plays like he's 4'3". There's got to be an issue there. Now, granted, the Bills' defense is a solid defense. I'm not going to take anything away from them, but. Again, I don't dig that. Now, before we get to some of the line overreactions that we have listed here, there's also the Thursday night game, and I'm curious as to what you think about the Thursday night game, because it's Bucs Panthers. It's a divisional game. What?
I don't like Tampa Bay.
Nobody likes Tampa Bay, and I mean, listen, Jameis Winston looked atrocious.
He looked so bad, Howard.
Atrocious, and they don't really have. I mean, what are they going to do? Go to Ryan Griffin or Blaine Gabbert as their backup?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because on the show this morning, I made a suggestion. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. This isn't really reality. This is more for a fantasy question, but I kind of threw this out there after thinking a little bit through, but of exactly the same thing that you're saying. I don't think that Tampa Bay has anybody else that they can go to, but I just don't think this is going to work out for Winston. I think at the end of the season, if Winston played all 16 games, he'd throw for almost 4,000 yards. When we did our over-unders, I went way under on all of Winston's props. He could throw for 4,000 yards, but he'll throw for 20 interceptions. What do you think about this? Just throwing it out there as a wild opportunity. The 49ers just gave all this money to Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So do you think that Tampa Bay should trade for Nick Mullins, right? Like, could they do the same thing like to San Francisco that San Francisco did to New England? I mean, Mullins was fantastic last year when he came in for Beathard and was throwing Kittle all over the place, right? Do you think that the 49ers would give him up for like a second or third, and then Arians would have a quarterback to work with at that point?
That would be a tough one. I think if anybody would stand in the way of that, it would be Shanahan, because I do think that Shanahan really appreciated what Mullins brought to the table last year.
Yeah.
He definitely brought a lot to the table. But, I mean, listen, I think that there are a number of backups around the NFL that the Tampa Bay Bucs will need to explore. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And look, it's going to be hard probably. I mean, we're not going to pick this game. It would be hard for me to make a final pick on it, but there's a lean for sure with me on Carolina, and I wouldn't think twice about it.
Oh, that it's less than a touchdown. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really the key for me. And look, you always worry about the back door with this sort of thing where Carolina is not really a dynamic offense. And they're up 14 points with 8 minutes to go, and Winston is the king of those garbage points at the end and just bringing the team back, kind of like he did against San Francisco. So Carolina's going to need to be up a good 21 points late, but this would either be a Panthers pick for me, Howard, or a no pick at all. As much as I love Tampa, we used Tampa a lot last year, and they covered in a lot of games, but I don't know. I'm not, and I feel bad for Bruce Arians coming back to this, because he probably thought that he had a good quarterback here. This is the same guy now we've seen for years. And the only difference is, Howard, Fitzpatrick is not there, so we can't start in week 2 or week 3. I think they got to keep playing Winston.
They have to keep playing him. They will keep playing him. It's going to be, I mean, listen, I do think that Arians will get frustrated and have a short leash, but again, I mean, Arians has worked with Gabbert. They worked together in Arizona, so maybe that's what's going on. Maybe what we're looking at here possibly is maybe if Winston throws a bunch of picks in this game, and the Bucks struggle, then maybe we do see some Ryan Griffin there, and with Gabbert as a possibility in the hole, and see if maybe that happens. I think. Listen, I agree with you. I think that I don't want to pick if I'm not picking Carolina, I'm not picking this game.
That's it for me.
But I also think that this is also a bit of an overreaction to the Panthers. Really, they put up 27 points on the Rams. It was all McCaffrey. Newton didn't have a good game. His receivers didn't have a good game. DJ Moore had a couple of drops. Curtis Samuel didn't play very strongly, and we thought that they were going to see some good stuff against them. What I do think is that the Rams defense really clamped down. Listen, you've got Aqib Talib on one side, you got Marcus Peters on the other, you got Nickel Roby-Coleman, as the slot corner over there. And what we saw with the Rams last year when they had Talib and Marcus Peters, then the middle of the field was exposed. Well, the Rams went and they fixed that. And I think that was something that Carolina really wasn't fully prepared for. So now what you're talking about, the Bucs defense, the Bucs defense is trash.
Yeah, they've exchanged over the last few years wins in Tampa. Tampa won 24-17. In Carolina won 42-28. In Tampa, Carolina won by 3. In Carolina, Carolina won by 14 the previous time, and then the time before that in Tampa Bay won by 1. It seems like when Carolina's at home, they win this game.
Handily.
Pretty much. Yeah. But when they're on the road, they either win or it's a short spread. But look, either way, I don't know how you can endorse a team that turns over. I think that for me, with all of the reactions and overreactions to week 1, the things that I don't feel are overreactions, there were 2 of them that came away. One we talked about already in this one. One is that Winston, at this point, it's not over yet, but I think it's close. And then the other one would be endorsing the Colts, wondering what's up with Vinatieri. I am a little worried about that. If we're going to back the Colts again, like, what's the deal here? Like, is this guy going to rebound and is going to start just kicking field goals again? Because I really want to side with them a few times. But if he's going to only make 2 out of every 3 kicks, Howard, you're going down a slippery slope there, because the kicker has got to be good for you to cover games in the NFL. You have to. In fantasy, it doesn't matter. In reality, we make fun of it. But to cover that spread, you got to have a good kicker, which is why Baltimore covers all their spreads, which is why the Ravens are so good against the spread. That guy Tucker, he never misses.
And now you've got the Colts. They're on the road in Tennessee.
And I like the Colts.
Who had a really good showing, and it's Tennessee -3.
And it looks wrong to me. Like, I think the Colts are probably better than Tennessee. I don't like Tennessee at all. I think that's overreaction. But it's the one team without a kicker, maybe. And so that tells, Howard, what if the score is 17-10 and the Titans are winning, and then the Colts attempt 2 field goals and miss to try to get a cover, win will get it. I don't know if I want to go down that road again this week, but let's give some possible overreactions. I'll ask you if you think that these are overreactions or not. These are the ones that I think that I identified. Okay. The Steelers, because of getting blown out Sunday night, playing Seattle at home. I understand Seattle's a good team, but the Steelers, to me, probably would have been more than a 4-point favorite against Seattle at home. Remember, a -3 at home is like basically you're just getting no points. It's like you're the same team as the other team. Pittsburgh, notoriously phenomenal at home. They just can't beat the Patriots. I thought this line would open up 5.5, 6 against Seattle, but only 4. So this is not a strong endorsement for Pittsburgh at all, and I think it's a little bit of overreaction. What about you?
No, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you, especially considering Seattle's secondary. I'm actually looking at the line right here, and I see it at -3.5 now, not even -4. And that's definitely a concern. To me, yes, I agree with you. It's an overreaction because you didn't see Big Ben have a good game. Juju Smith-Schuster has a little bit of a toe injury. Dante Moncrief was dropping balls left and right. They didn't throw enough to Vance McDonald. Going up against Seattle, who has a bottom 5 secondary nowadays. If you look at any of the grade outs of any of their cover corners, any of their safeties, it doesn't look good. So, yeah, I think that what we're looking at here is it should have been a bigger line, and the lean definitely here is Pittsburgh because you're not giving up a whole lot of points.
Yeah, the second one here, this is a big surprise for me. We'll have to see if we end up picking this game on Sunday. But I got to tell you, Howard, how are the Falcons not favored at home against virtually anyone in the NFL? they're a good team, and they're at home. They're always good at home. But because they were so awful last week against Minnesota, they're playing the Eagles. And look, the Eagles are okay. But the Falcons may be getting points at home against Philadelphia this week. Oof,
yeah,
I mean,
I'll take it. I'll give me the points. Give me the points.
I mean,
absolutely.
Come on, Atlanta at home, really? Like, look, you know that Atlanta's going to make a mistake at some point in this game, and we're going to throw something to the TV because it happens every week with the Falcons. They make mistakes, but they went up against a really good team in Minnesota. They got worked. They got destroyed. But Atlanta is kind of like the Saints, where they don't play well on the road, but they go at home and they look like an unbelievable team. They're 5-3, 6-2 at home every single year. And I just can't believe that they're not even a favorite and they're an underdog to the Eagles. It just seems like a weird line to me. Maybe it's a sucker bet. And then the third one, of course, is Baltimore. We mentioned them a little bit earlier. Because they blew out Miami so badly, there's a massive overreaction, I think, on this line. I don't think Arizona's very good, Howard. I came out of that feeling Detroit was the better team, but this does seem like an awfully big 13.5-point spread over Arizona, a team that could potentially do the same thing to the Ravens that they did to Detroit. And by the way, maybe not even win, maybe not win, but maybe just keep it, maybe lose by 10.
Yeah.
They could be down by 17 points with 3 minutes to go, score a late touchdown, take the backdoor cover and go. So that seems to be, to me, a little bit of an overreaction. Did the Ravens go from before the season, everyone predicting them to win like 8 or 9 games, to being Super Bowl favorites? Because when you're favored by 14 over a team, you're supposed to be like a contender for the Super Bowl. Trust me.
Oh, come on. Lamar Jackson, Marquise Hollywood Brown. Those guys were dynamic. Come on, Hollywood Brown. The dude caught, 147 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns in that game, and he only played like 10 snaps. Imagine what happens. Give him 20 snaps and he'll double that production, right?
Yeah. And the other part of this, too, is that I think that, the game plan for Baltimore, my guess is just looking, and look, that could change now with Lamar Jackson and if they have this expectation, but Baltimore's always been a pretty heavy run control, burn the clock type team, too. And I just think they completely exploited Miami last week. They knew Miami could have no pass rush. So, look, is it dangerous to take such a big underdog? For sure, perhaps, but I would say this. I don't see Baltimore by the time Sunday comes along being 13.5. I think it goes down to 13, 12.5 perhaps. I don't think it'll stay there. So if you are going to bet Arizona, you probably need to do it now, especially online, and grab yourself a half point, get that 14. Very surprising lines on those 3. But again, as we go toward the week and we see what the line movement is, we can hone in on these a little bit more, and then we'll come back on Friday night, of course, and then we'll have our final pick. By the way, that line is still 13.5 right now. Baltimore minus 13.5. So we'll come back Friday and we'll have our final picks. We'll see how the Thursday night games go, and I look forward to catching up with you then.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much, Mish. Always a pleasure, without a doubt. Big thanks to Matt Sells, our producer. And hey, big thanks to all of you for, again, watching the Wager Alarm live stream. We'll catch up with you Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, this very same spot. We will have our picks for the Super Contest and the Golden Nugget all available for you guys then. In the meantime, best of luck to you and all your other games that you're betting, and we'll catch you next time.